Well, I suppose the case that stands out most is probably a case that I had my very first year on the bench. It was a murder case, and it was a African American medical doctor from Fort Valley that was accused of killing a white woman here in Houston County, and it was racially charged. There was a lot of publicity. We had all the Atlanta television stations were down here covering it. CNN was covering it. They thought it was going to be race riots in the street. There was just a lot of inflammatory things being cast out in the community back and forth, just sort of racial overtones in the whole thing, and there was just a lot of tension. And the whole thing lasted about a month, and it was just an extremely difficult case, and we had everything that could possibly go wrong, and we had all manner of things. We had a juror whose sister died during the trial, and the juror was African American, and one side didn't want him excused, and the other side said he should be, and his family wanted him, and we had a matter to come up that caused us to have to exhume the body in the middle of the trial and get a forensic dentist to come in and prove the identity of the victim by dental records, and it was just a really exhausting, wearying thing. It was not a death penalty case, but we tried it like a death penalty case. The jury was sequestered over in the New Perry Hotel, and we were going on Saturday, and it was just a long, difficult thing. But it turned out to be sort of a good thing for me, because when it was all over, I sort of knew that it wasn't likely that I would ever have anything any worse than that to come along, and I felt like if I can make it through that and handle that, I can get through anything. And so that was sort of a source of some comfort. When difficult things would come up later, I would always think, well, it's not going to be any worse than that case. So that was a pretty memorable case.
Trial by fire, obviously.
Yeah, it really was. I was pretty green at the time, and but just tried to stay patient and calm and made it through. My secretary several years ago at Christmas time, she gave me for a Christmas gift a nice leather binder, and she had printed off all of the poems that I had done over the years, and I was rather amazed at how thick the book was. Yay thick. I've roasted a lot of people and written poems for my sisters when they turned 60, I think, and for my children when they got married, and for a couple of retirement ceremonies and some at the church, and I didn't realize I had done that many of them, and a lot of them are pretty samey and use some of the same stuff, I think, but I've done a lot of that over the years. I like to laugh. I try to be careful with that in court. Court it's routine for those of us that work in the court system, and we're there every day, and we hear the same stuff a lot, but it's not routine for the parties, and I always try to remember that. I've never had anyone try to attack me. I had a very scary incident in the old courthouse, and I cannot tell you exactly what year it was. I had a young boy that entered a plea to a pretty serious charge, and his attorney, I had already informed the attorney that he was going to spend some time in jail, and we had the sentencing hearing took place several days after I think he had entered a plea, and they'd wanted to present some evidence on his behalf, or I can't remember exactly, but in any event, we did the sentencing hearing, and I gave him a sentence that involved some jail time. It wasn't terrible jail time, but it involved some jail time. And his family was there. His father was a airline pilot from Atlanta, and he had 3 sisters that were all married, and they were all present. And after the sentencing, I walked out of the courtroom, and I had to walk down sort of a long hall in the old courthouse to my office. And about the time I got to my office, one of the investigators that had been involved in the case came running in my office with the wife in tow. The wife had been the victim in the case. And he said, "He's loose in the courthouse, he's got a gun, he's already shot a deputy." Well, I realized that this girl that was now in my office was probably who he was after. And I intended to get out, or to get her out. And I asked the deputy it was an investigator, I asked him if he had his gun. He said, "No, it's downstairs in the car." And I said, "Well, I'm leaving." And he said, "No, you're staying here." Well, we had a window that looked out over the parking lot, and I quickly realized that all the commotion was in the parking lot. But the kid ran downstairs, jumped in his car, deputy chasing him. He pulled a big pistol out from under his seat and turned and pointed it at the deputy. The deputy fell back, pulling his gun, and the kid put the gun to his head and blew his head off. And the family, everybody was sort of chasing down the stairs, and the deputy's lying on the pavement with his gun in his hand, and the boys in the car dead, and nobody knew whether the deputy shot him or he shot the deputy, or it was mass confusion, and it was pretty frightening. And then and nobody was sure whether did he have the gun in the courtroom or not, and we had no security at the time. It was pretty well determined that the gun was in the car, and his family had allowed him. He was not in custody, and the family had allowed him to drive his own car to the sentencing hearing. I don't know why, but that was a rather frightening thing. For a few moments, when I was told that he was loose in the courthouse and had a gun and had shot a deputy, and I knew that the woman that was in my office then was who he was after, it was pretty frightening. But I have never felt personally threatened. I don't have any huge accomplishments that I can point to and say, "Oh, I did this," or "I did that," or "Here's what I've done." I have been invited 3 or 4, I think 3 times to sit as a substitute on the Georgia Supreme Court, and that was a neat experience and a rewarding experience. You know, you're very humble when you go up there, and those guys are there all the time, and you're just a guest sitting in for someone who had to be recused. But the fact that I have been invited back more than once, makes me feel good. But it just so happened this time that I was the president of the council at the time, so I was appointed as the chief judge of the court, and then the other 6 were appointed. So we go up, and we're being given instructions, and we've all seen the Supreme Court room and the bench and everything there. And the back wall behind the court, it looks like a marble wall. I mean, it just looks like a solid marble wall. But when they come in, the doors part, and the judges come in from the back, and they take their seats. And so we were told that as we went in, that I would be the last one in, because my seat would be right in the middle, and they would each one go this way, and I would be the last one in, and then I would be the first one out. So we got to that point, and we got up there, and I was in the back of the line. I wasn't paying any attention, and so we all go in and we sit down and we hear the case and we get through. And when we get through with the case, then we were going to all leave, and then the real court justices were going to come back and hear all the rest of the cases. We just were there for this one case. So we got up, and I was to be the first one out, and I turned around, and I'm looking at this wall, and I think, I don't have any idea how to get this door open. And I'm standing there, and I realized that all the others have started looking at me, and you got a courtroom full of people and lawyers and people that are used to being there in the court. And I suddenly thought, well, I'm not going to turn around and be embarrassed. And the only thing I could think of to say was, "Open sesame." And just as I said it, the doors just parted. Somebody, I don't know whether there's I think one of the court personnel had figured out that I didn't know what to do, so they did whatever was necessary to open the door. But nobody heard me except all the other judges that were there. They heard me say, "Open sesame," and the doors just parted, and we walked out, and they were all laughing and chuckling.